Welcome back to our podcast. You're joining us on People Just Like Us, a Healing for the Heart here. And today, I'm really pleased I'm joined by Karen Dunbar. Karen's here and she is going to have a bit of a chat with us about mental health and all sorts of other things. So, you don't want to hear from me, you do want to hear from her though. So let's kick it off with, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Karen? How did you get to be doing what you're doing just now?
Hi Shona, hi everybody. So what I'm doing just now, well the things that I'm doing just now is I'm working with different communities doing rap and hip hop workshops. So how did I get to doing that? So some of you might know me, some of you don't. I started off in television. Well, actually I started off hosting karaoke. So I'll give you the short answer. 1990, when I was 19, so last century. I worked in a bar and karaoke had just come out, and I was the barmaid, and my boss said, Karen, you can sing a bit, host this karaoke. That was the gist of it, and from that came a full career as went from working in the bar to hosting the karaoke full time to moving from Ayr, because I was in Ayr at the time, through to Glasgow, starting my own karaoke and cabaret business, into DJing as well, and worked in pub and club entertainment for about 7 years. And again, long story short, went to an audition. I'd never been to an audition before, so I didn't really know what I was doing. My pal bumped into me and said, you need to go to these auditions. And the audition was for Chewing the Fat. And I got it. And then that was on the telly. So I was still hosting the karaoke, so there was times when I would be in on a Thursday night and go, oh, and turn the telly, the words come up on the karaoke, turn the telly on, and I was on the telly, and I was in the pub hosting the karaoke. And then from there I got my own show, and then I stopped the karaoke and the DJing. I was a bit busy. So that's the lead into it. How I came to do these workshops was during the lockdown, like most people. I just didn't know what to do with myself, and when I say worried about my mental health, I was aware that I needed something. I needed to work, and I needed to work not just for money, but that was part of it as well. Yeah. But mainly to sort of keep a hold of my sanity, to keep healthy. I'd had this idea, very, very rough idea, that I wanted to work with folk, I wanted to do things with folk, get folk in a room and write a song. That was all I had to start off with, and from that came these rap hip hop workshops, and now going into DJing workshops as well, which have not only proved to be lucrative, sound like I know what I'm talking about now, but they have proved to be like lucrative business wise. Yep. But so much more than that is the feel good that I get from it and for it for other people as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. So the pandemic then obviously had an impact on you, it had an impact on lots of people, didn't it? What was that kind of impact then in terms of the pandemic and the isolation? I presume your work stopped.
A lot of my work stopped. I was still doing a couple of other things, but they were in the distance a bit. They were months down the line, and also, the live stuff, some of that tried to go on online. So I'm meant to be in a venue hosting a big event, and then the next thing I'm recording it into my phone. Yeah. I think, that was in the April, so we were only a few weeks into it. And see the stress I had doing that. Yeah. I'm in my house recording it on mine, and it must have took 3 hours to record about 6 minutes of stuff, because it's only wee links that I had to do. I was doing them over and over and over, and that just didn't feel. I thought, I can't do this. Yeah. If this is how it's going to go, I'm not doing this. Yeah. So the other effects, like most people, and I know everybody, but the majority is, without starting to get political, because I wouldn't really know what I was talking about, but it feels like the people that didn't suffer were the ones that had the most money and were making money for it. Maybe that's unfair of me to say that, but that's just my thoughts, so I'll put that out there. And so, like most of us, firstly there was, in the first few days was the total fear and the shock. Was like, I remember saying to myself, because I've got older relatives, I thought, right, people I love and care about are going to die, and I might die.
Yep.
Because that's what
Yep.
it felt like.
Yep.
How I try to get my head around the fact that the world used to be like this, and now it's like this.
Yep.
And it really felt like, and it still feels like, things will never be the same again.
Yep.
No matter what we go, and you keep redirecting me if I go off in one here,
No.
but no matter what we go to next, it will never be the same as it was before the 22nd of March.
Yep.
2020. Was it?
Yep.
2020.
Yep.
Time.
It all just merges
Can't believe
into
it's
one,
nearly
doesn't it?
2 years.
Yep. And do you think that's where some of the stress comes from then? And is it just stress, or is there other stuff that kicks around? Because like obviously, we're thinking this podcast about people just like us, and folks might look at you and think, oh, you've got it all together and you've got this career and it's all sorted kind of thing. But actually, just like everybody else, the stress of the pandemic actually causes you to feel things and causes you to start to behave in particular ways or whatever.
Aye.
Even the stress of, I wonder whether or not in normal times, if you'd had to do something on your phone, if in actual fact it might have been a hassle, but it wouldn't have been a big deal. But actually with all of the other stuff that was going on round about, it just like becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back kind of thing.
Well, you're spot on there. And firstly, without being too dramatic, but I probably had one of the worst years of my life in 2019. I had a really, really bad year, just personal stuff, which I'll go into if you come up to me in the street, I'll tell you, but I'm not putting on camera. I'll save it for the book. That sort of sounds very, very glam.
It's the book you've got the film deal for as well, isn't it?
Aye. Who's going to play me? I had a really bad year, and so I remember thinking, when we went into 2020, my pal had a tough time as well, and I've got his message on New Year's Day saying, "Happy New Year, doll." He says, "Whatever happens this year, it can't be as bad as last year. So here's to the new year, here's to 2020. Do you know, and 3 months later.
Yeah.
But, so, might sound strange, but it was a touchstone for me. I kept thinking, none can be as bad as 2019. And to a certain extent, it wasn't. However, there was everything that was happening in 2020. So, to answer that about filming, that would have been stressful, or it would have been a hassle. But anything that would have been a hassle before, and I still feel that now to a certain degree, and that's not to be too doom and gloom, Shona, but I think there is a level of, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but there's a level of post-traumatic stress that almost everybody will have going on in them, because to have something, even when I wasn't good before this, there's something subconscious or even conscious that the world's still going on as is. And if and when I can rejoin it, if I can manage to get myself out of the house, because it was a bad year, if I can manage to get myself out of the house, then the world's there for me. And, all the good and bad. And then it wasn't.
It's that unfamiliarity, isn't it? The thing that holds you in the midst of when there's chaos round about you is actually there's something familiar that you can hold on to. But in actual fact, during the pandemic, all that familiar stuff just seemed to disappear. So there's no anchor point for you. There's nothing that actually keeps you solid. And we've talked about this before, haven't we? But there's nothing that actually keeps you solid in the whole thing. And so therefore, there's no compass point. So you end up feeling like the whole thing has just gone and just gone haywire. So obviously, we met in the middle of the pandemic. So there we go. If the pandemic hadn't happened, maybe we wouldn't have been doing this. So there's a silver lining somewhere there. But we met in the pandemic because you were looking at rap writing workshops, which somebody had said to me, you should get in touch with Karen because actually she's looking at rap writing workshops. And I'm like, what on earth would we want to do a rap writing workshop for? But because it was one of my board that had suggested it, I'm like, well, we should follow this up. And we had this conversation, and honestly, I couldn't believe what came out of the rap writing workshops. But tell me how that was for you.
And as you said there, so much good, and I'm careful of it, but so much good has come out of that adversity, which is it's always got that potential, whatever the adversity is. And I don't try and not to swear, but it might be slightly coloured language, to use a term. I'm not trying to turn shite into manure, right? But there has been an awful lot of good that's come out.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the question now. Perimenopausal.
And that's the nick. No. The rap writing workshops. What do you think came out of those? What did it for
what
you
came out of them and what is still coming out of them? I was doing one yesterday. It was International Women's Day yesterday. I did one doing with Tomorrow's Women at the Gorbals. Total joy. So what's come out of it? If there was one word, again, without trying to advertise or sell it around, because it doesn't even need to be, is the joy that's in it. And that, I knew it would be fun. Well, I hoped it would be fun. I thought it had good potential, but I didn't really have any idea of the I use this term, the depth of the therapeutic value it would have. Didn't know that because I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
I know that creativity has a therapeutic value, but how that would be for a group of strangers to be doing that with rap, we're doing this with a 50-year-old woman. Well, I was in my 40s at the time, 50 last year. But so if there was one word that I would say is come out of it is joy. I don't know if it would be pushing things to say healing, because I think healing can be different things to different people. And what I would say my own experience is it's no linear for me either. There's I would use terms before in my own life and say, well, I've dealt with that. And then like 2 years later, I'm like, right, I thought I'd dealt with that. Yep. So I think the idea that I'm away into something else now, but so rein me back, but the idea that healing is linear and recovery is progressive hasn't been my experience.
Yeah.
It has in some kind of fundamental ways, but there's emotional stuff still comes up that I think still needs ongoing attendance to in my life. It reminds me sometimes my dad had arthritis. And he was in his late 70s, his 80s, and I would go and see him, and he'd be in an awful lot of pain, and he would just be kind of tholing it. Do you know, he'd be sitting there. Yeah. And then sometimes he would not be tholing it. He'd be really frustrated, and then I'd go and see him another time, and he'd go, "I've bought this lamp," and he would have that, and that would give him some ease. And sometimes I see the kind of similarities in that. You think, right, that's that, and then whatever this thing is comes back. So it's just that, it's that ongoing. So again, math and one, Shona, bring me back.
But that's true though, isn't it? And I think that's why people sometimes get disappointed, particularly when they're journeying through mental health and wellbeing, because we think we've dealt with it, we're sorted, and now we can move on. And then all of a sudden we get this assault from somewhere that's just like we thought that was that was done, and then we're back in the midst of it again. And for some folks, there's a real disappointment in that, and certainly for some folks that I've come across, there's a real sense almost of failure in the midst of that I thought I had fixed this and I haven't. And maybe there's something about how we create that level playing field that actually does start to talk about the fact that this is not a linear journey. It's not, you don't move from one thing to the other. You go forward and then you go back a bit and then you go round a corner and then you go off to one side and it is all over the place, because that's actually what life does, because life's not linear either. And I think certainly for us, out of those rap workshops, that's what we saw, particularly with the women, and it was a group of women that journeyed with you on that. And I've said to you before, there's great skill in the way you facilitate those workshops, because folks watching this or listening to this know you as somebody who's inherently funny. And I remember saying to you, somebody had said to me, I can't believe you're going to be talking to Karen Dunbar. Do you not just sit and laugh all the time? And you said to me, did you not tell her I'm not really that funny? But that's not the kind of relationship that certainly we've had, or that you've had with Healing for the Heart. But I watched you with those women in the rap workshops, how you could actually all be laughing 1 minute, and then the next minute you were really deep into something, and you had the rap to keep coming back to, that gave them that anchor point, but also gave them something that wasn't scary. It was something that, as you say, brought lots of joy, but out of that comes a whole lot of processing for people.
Well, it's lovely to hear that, because I kind of know that, but I don't see it. Certainly don't see it when I'm in it. I'm just doing it. Yeah. But also to have that feedback's been really useful, because there's a bit of me that thinks, and I think we picked that up a wee bit for Healing for the Heart, and I've had it in different areas, when in my head it's like this. When I thought I want to do rap workshops, this is the next thing in my head where you talk about, nearly 50 now. Right, so you're a middle-aged woman, white, female, gay, middle-aged woman in Scotland. Like, I'm a rapper now. And I want other white middle-aged women to be rappers with me. And that, by the way, the workshops have been so diverse, but it's just all that stuff in my head. And I think that can sometimes be, it's only a slight hurdle. I've found it, only slight. And I don't know, but it's only just sitting here now thinking, well, maybe when they see that I'm doing it, now I know I'm a performer, and if they do know me, then they'll be like, well, it's easy for you. And Shona, to a certain degree, it is easy for me because I've had years of experience having to perform. So that bit's easy. But getting all that emotional stuff, that's what I found was the sort of challenge and the growth to a certain degree that I've had with doing the rap workshops is because of that voice that's in me. It's like, what are you doing? I'll be completely honest with you. That's because you can't get any work on the telly. I mean, really, some of the stuff in my head sometimes, which I've to like, I just filmed a TV thing, so you can see it's rubbish, but still I'm like,
Yep.
And separating that critical voice out as well.
Yep. And it's interesting because that will resonate with lots of folk who are watching this, because I think that's something, actually I think it's something particularly women battle with that inner critic that keeps saying, oh, you're rubbish at that, you don't look as good as anybody else does, how do you think you're actually going to do that, who do you think you are, and all of those phrases that we've picked up along the way from people who didn't really cheer us on, that we then internalise in that wee voice that just keeps coming out and keep coming out. I'm really glad you ignored that wee voice and actually pushed into this stuff, because there's something that's really powerful in that stuff that you're doing, and certainly we're hoping and looking forward to you being able to come and do some more with us. Just kind of generally, I guess, as we're kind of we wind this up or we come towards the end of this, then thinking a bit more generally, I'll throw the question in. It's like, so if we're obviously a mental health charity and we're trying to improve mental health and wellbeing. And so therefore, if somebody gave you a magic wand or fairy dust or something like that, or power, that you could change one thing that would actually radically make a difference in the culture that we live in today to people's mental health and well-being, what would it be?
It's interesting because quite a few things come in, and another bit of me is like, it's no that and it's no that. I think that how we define worth is at the core of it.
Yeah.
There's a story coming into my head there, but we're winding up, not too long. So how we define worth and the attachment that society has, or how we're born into a culture of, if you do these things, you will be worthwhile. If you look this way, you will be worthwhile. If you have these things, you will be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And all that is essentially to make money. And how's it working out for us?
Yeah, no, very well.
How's it working out for us? So if we were able to redefine what worth was, and then and live for that place, I think we would have a very different picture of mental well-being in the world.
Yep, and there's something about intrinsic worth and intrinsic value, isn't there? Without doing anything, without being anything, without conforming to anything, there's something about how we help people to experience that intrinsic value just because they are.
Mm-hmm. There's a saying somewhere, and I'll totally paraphrase and get it wrong, so if anybody finds it, please send me it, but it's like, you are worthy simply because you exist.
That's right.
It's no, and that's the saying, no for anything that you've done. Your worth doesn't come from what you've done or how you look or what you've got, but your worth comes because you are here.
Yeah.
That's because you exist. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't see, there's very, very little we see to support that out there.
Yeah. And that sounds like a really good place to finish, doesn't it?
I think so.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for coming in and for talking to us. I'm sure there'll be tons of feedback in this when we stick it up online. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate what you've been doing with us, and we are looking forward to being able to release the next wrap that we do here on our social media and our website as well. So thanks again.
Oh, likewise. Hope to see you soon. Thanks, Shona.